Once upon a time in the heart of an African city, Adanna walked the streets, her presence known by all, though no one really knew her. At 18, her life had already been a difficult journey. With no family to call her own and no place to lay her head, she had grown accustomed to scavenging for food in garbage bins and sleeping in alleyways. The city's residents whispered as she passed by, their judgment clear in their eyes. They thought she was mad, an eccentric young girl whose wild hair and tattered clothes only added to their perception. But Adanna saw herself differently. Despite her circumstances, she held on to an inner fire, a belief that she was meant for something greater than the life she lived. Her days were hard, but her spirit was unbreakable. She spent her nights dreaming under the stars, imagining a life where love and happiness were not so far out of reach. Unbeknownst to her, fate was about to take her on a journey she could never have anticipated. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Edward, a 90-year-old widower living in America, was contemplating the next phase of his life. After losing his beloved wife, Edward had traveled the world seeking purpose and healing. His humanitarian work had taken him to many places, but it was Africa that held a special place in his heart. There, amidst the vibrant culture and warm-hearted people, Edward found peace, though his heart still yearned for companionship. On a whim, Edward decided to return to Africa, this time to the very city where Adanna roamed. He didn't know what he was searching for, but he believed that the journey would lead him to something or someone who would give his life new meaning. Little did he know, his path was about to cross with that of a young girl whose spirit was as free as the wind and whose presence would change everything. The day began like any other for Adanna. She wandered the streets trying to find scraps of food and avoiding the stares of the locals. It was in the bustling marketplace where fate intervened. As Adanna rummaged through a garbage bin, her eyes caught sight of an old man sitting quietly at a nearby cafe, observing the world with a peaceful demeanor. The man was none other than Edward, the American who had arrived in the city just days earlier. Curiosity pulled Adanna closer to the cafe, and as their eyes met for the first time, something stirred in both of them. Edward saw beyond Adanna's rough exterior and was captivated by the strength in her gaze. She, in turn, was intrigued by the kindness that radiated from this stranger. Though neither of them spoke that day, a connection had been made, a quiet bond that would soon grow into something far greater. Edward couldn't stop thinking about the girl he had seen at the market. There was something about her that reminded him of himself in his younger days, a sense of being out of place, but with an undeniable resilience. Over the next few days, Edward found himself returning to the market, hoping to see her again, and each time he did. At first, Adanna kept her distance, unsure of why this man seemed so interested in her. But slowly, their brief glances turned into hesitant conversations. Edward offered her small meals, and though Adanna was wary, she accepted. As the days went on, their conversations grew deeper. Edward learned about Adanna's difficult past, and in turn, Adanna found solace in sharing her story with someone who truly listened. It wasn't long before their connection blossomed into something more meaningful. Edward admired Adanna's fierce independence, and she began to trust the gentle soul who had taken an interest in her life. They spent more and more time together, walking through the streets and sitting in the market square, where Adanna no longer felt so out of place. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a lost cause or a mad woman, but as a person with dreams and aspirations. Edward, too, felt a change within himself. He had come to Africa searching for purpose, and in Adanna, he had found it. Despite the vast differences in their age, backgrounds, and life experiences, they understood each other on a level that transcended the superficial. What began as an unlikely friendship was slowly evolving into something neither of them had expected: love. As Adanna and Edward grew closer, their relationship did not go unnoticed by the city's residents. Gossip spread quickly through the marketplace, with people whispering about the young girl who had captured the attention of the elderly foreigner. Some said that Adanna was only interested in Edward for his money, while others speculated that Edward had lost his mind, falling for someone so young and wild. Despite the rumors, neither Adanna nor Edward let the gossip affect them. Their bond was too strong to be shaken by the opinions of others. They continued to meet each day, their affection for one another growing with each passing moment. Adanna, who had once been the subject of mockery and judgment, now walked through the streets with her head held high, and Edward, who had been searching for meaning in the twilight of his life, found joy and fulfillment in the company of the girl who had stolen his heart. As time went on, Edward's feelings for Adanna deepened, and he knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. Though their love was unconventional, it was real, and Edward had no doubts about the path he wanted to take. One evening, as they sat beneath the stars, Edward reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. With tears in his eyes, he asked Adanna to marry him. Adanna was stunned. She had never imagined that someone like Edward would want to marry her, someone who had lived on the streets, someone whom society had cast aside. But in Edward's eyes, she was more than worthy. She was the woman he had been waiting for all his life. With a heart full of love, Adanna said yes, and in that moment, her life changed forever.